Hey, Richard Bryce here, Tennis Hacker. If you're struggling to improve your forehand, maybe you just make too many unforced errors, or maybe you're trying to turn it into a weapon, but the practice that you're putting in doesn't seem to give you the improvements that you're hoping for, this video is going to help you because there's basically only two things that are going on, two reasons why your forehand isn't improving. So I want to explain what they are and how you can start to change them so that you can make drastic improvements in your forehand. I hope you find the video helpful. If you do, it'd be awesome if you give me a thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber to my channel, really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button as well. The first reason that your forehand isn't improving is probably going to come down to the way that you practice. And there's going to be a few parts to this. The first thing that you need to understand is that you might be working on too many things at one time or trying to focus on too many things. You might be trying to think about the split step, the way that you do your unit turn, your elbow position. You might be thinking about trying to create your racket lag and the way that you follow through. And thinking about all those things in one go is simply too much information for your brain to be able to process at any one time. This is just how our bodies function. So instead of improving all of them, you end up improving none of them. So the first piece when it comes to practice is that you need to choose one or maybe two things maximum at one time to focus on. So if you have addressed your unit turn as the thing that you need to work on, so maybe you're trying to adjust what you do with your elbow to maybe modernize your stroke to help you get more power, you have to focus on that one thing and you have to do that one thing enough times until it becomes a habit and you've fixed that problem. So you have to focus on it and not allow yourself to get distracted by the contact point, the follow through, and all the other stuff. So that is part one, just focusing on one thing at a time. But then that leads us into the next thing that's going to be really critical, and that is that you need to choose the right thing to focus on. And by the right thing, what this means is something that comes at the start of the shot sequence, because tennis strokes are a sequence of events. They happen in cycles. Your opponent's shaping up to hit their ball, you're timing a split step just after they've made contact, you're then doing your unit turn along with a pivot step, you've got your footwork as you move to the ball, you've got to space yourself and be the right distance from the ball, then you start the swing, then you make the contact, then you follow through. This, then this, then this, then this, then this. If you don't get the earlier steps correct or get them to be as efficient as they need to be, it messes things up further down the line and it reduces the likelihood that you're going to execute your shot well. So if you're late to prepare, you're too close to the ball and you swing late, the chances of you making a nice clean contact, hitting through the ball and keeping your head still through contact, the chances are much smaller. So when you're choosing what to work on, you need to choose the appropriate thing and you need to think earlier on in the shot cycle rather than stuff at the end of the shot cycle. And for most people, that's going to be spending more time focusing on the way that you prepare, the way that you do your unit turn, practicing and working on your footwork, because those things come first, and then working on the latter stuff. And it's a little bit less glamorous to think about it that way, and it's not generally the way it gets taught by coaches and people on YouTube, because obviously the exciting part is what you're doing with your racket. But this is why so many players fail to improve, and it's very possibly why your forehand isn't improving, because you're not focusing on the right thing. And then the third part to all this is going to be structuring your practice in the right way to actually allow these changes to happen. Because one of the most common things that I see from players, and this is especially at like the 4.0 and the 4.5 level, people are really competitive and they really want to show other people that they can win, and it's all about playing the points. But when you're trying to make technical changes, it requires focus, it requires concentration, and it requires repetition. We have to go through phases of learning. So when you're trying to make something new happen, and if we're using the elbow example from earlier, I'm trying to adjust what I do with my preparation to develop more of a modern forehand, I have to think about that over and over again. So as I turn, I'm having to concentrate on what's happening with my elbow. Is it in the correct position? Whereas if you do that a couple of times and then you go out and start to play a match, because you're trying to focus on the point play and all this other stuff, your brain isn't able to concentrate on what you're doing with your unit turn, and you end up reverting back to the bad habits that you had before. So you have to structure your practice in the right way to allow these improvements to happen. And that potentially means achieving thousands of repetitions working on one thing at a time. So maybe getting a ball machine or a practice partner or a coach, someone to feed you balls at the right level of difficulty so you can just practice the way that you're doing your unit turn over and over again until it becomes a habit, until it becomes automated. And once that's happened, you've now fixed that problem, and then you can move on to the next thing that you need to work on. And you have to basically go through your stroke like that, fix step 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, all the way through to the end of the stroke. And by doing that, that will really allow you to transform your forehand and make it into a much better quality of stroke. Now that we've talked about the quality and the structure of your practice, we need to talk about the next thing that's preventing you from improving your forehand, and potentially this is the biggest thing that's going on, because even if you did everything I've just described perfectly, you still might not improve past a certain point because you might not have enough skill and ability to do the things that you're trying to do. And I know that sounds a little bit harsh, but it's also the reality of how things work. The way that we teach tennis, we tend to go, look, this is how Roger Federer hits his forehand. This is how you should hit your forehand. But Roger Federer is one of the greatest tennis athletes to ever step on the planet with insane hand-to-eye coordination. That's how he can do what he does. Realistically, your body doesn't function like his, because I know mine doesn't. So you need to understand that in order for you to hit a higher level quality of forehand, your body has to function in a way that's going to allow you to hit it. Because when you kind of break down most people's strokes, and if you record yourself playing, you'll probably see this, the biggest thing that goes on at lower levels, and by lower I mean below 5.0, is that players just don't prepare soon enough. The ball is either, it's almost over the net, or it's bouncing on their side of the court before they start to fully prepare, because their visual system can't read where the ball's going soon enough. And as we've just talked about, preparation comes first. If you don't get that part right, everything else falls down after that. The next most common thing that you see from players is they get too close to the ball, and that basically throws the biomechanics off. The next most common problem is that people hit the ball late. They can't start their swing at the right time. They can't adjust the speed of their swing appropriately. And it's so common to see coaches working with players trying to adjust what they do with their elbow. Should I release on my forehand at this angle? Should I release it at this angle? And they're basically trying to fix problems with timing. But timing comes down to, can you judge the speed and the distance of the ball? And can you start your swing at the right time? Then do you have the coordination in order to be able to sequence your body movements at the right time and to the right speed relative to the ball that you're dealing with? And if the answer is no, your body doesn't function in a way that's going to allow you to do it, it's going to max out how well you can hit your forehand. So this is the stuff you kind of need to think about in terms of addressing what you've currently got going on. The good news though is that that is stuff you can actually change with training. And this is the big area that I work with tennis players on. I teach people about the technique, I teach people about the tactics, because that's obviously really important too, but you can only play up until the point that your skill level will allow, so it might be something you need to address. If you'd like to learn more about it, I've created a web class to help you. I'll place a link down there and I'll place a link up there so you can check it out. It's going to go into a lot more detail about how these systems function, how it relates to tennis. It's going to take you through a series of assessments, so we can actually do assessments to look at your visual system and see if there's things that are preventing you from hitting your forehand in a certain way. We can assess coordination side to side and see if there's imbalances that might be affecting your timing. So it's going to take you through that and explain a little bit about it, and potentially that might be really helpful for you. But hopefully this has made sense. There are basically two things that are preventing you from improving at the moment. The first one is not practicing in the right way. So from here on out, hopefully you can kind of analyze your strokes more appropriately and then spend time working on what you need to. If that means spending time focusing on the split step and practicing your footwork until it becomes a habit, then that's what you need to do before moving on to the next thing. And then obviously, if you want to dive in a little bit deeper and really take your forehand to the next level, check out that web class, start to work on improving your eye to hand and eye to foot coordination, because the combination of good quality, well-structured practice and improving your skill level, that's how you really kind of raise your forehand to that next level. So that's the options that are available to you if you want. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what I've said today. Does it make sense, or do you think I'm the worst person in the world for pointing out that you might not have the skill to play in a way that you want? Leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you as quick as I can.